This week on This Baker Life, we are talking business relationships and the importance of business relationships, even if they could possibly have been competitive relationships, but instead you work together to help each other out, to help each other grow, to inspire, to motivate each other, instead of being huge competition for each other. And we have a prime example of that coming from the mortgage industry in Canada, and it is Christine Beumann and Francis Hinojosa, both very, very successful mortgage brokers who, instead of competing with each other, have become virtually best friends. And out of it, have really helped each other have great, powerful relationships that have built their business to success. We're going to find out what they're doing, how they did it, and how it's affecting their business right now. Well, welcome to the TBL podcast. I'm so excited to have two guests here from my very own industry, in the mortgage industry. They are the greatest of friends, and in an industry that is, well, not well known for that, and maybe more well known for rivalries and hiding information from each other and hoping that, they have one has better sales over the other. This is a story that I found so fascinating. I know when I met Francis brought up Christine right away as a big friend in the industry, and I was so curious to hear about this story. And I've seen your posts and everything on Facebook, and seen you guys do things outside of the industry. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Francis Hinojosa and Christine Beumann, both mortgage brokers, but they don't hate each other and they're not competing with each other. In fact, they love each other. And so we need to hear about this story. Francis and Christine, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Well, you guys,
thanks, Chris.
No problem, Francis. And you guys are the best of friends. And I'm going to throw this one to Francis first, because I've heard Francis' side of the story. Francis, how did you and Christine meet and become friends, even though both of you are across the country from each other?
You know what? I was thinking about this, and Christine, I don't know if you remember. I remember the first time that we met, but we didn't meet. And let's see if you remember too. I'm sure we have different perceptions here, but I would say it was in Miami on the Scotia trip. And I just remember making eye contact with you, and I swear to God, you're gonna laugh your ass off. It was like something out of a movie reel, like a slow scene. It's like the whole world disappeared. We kind of we did this instant look connection. We didn't even say anything to each other. We kind of just did this smile, wink, nod, yeah, I see you, I get you. You're my kind of person, and we don't need to have a conversation quite yet. And I remember coming home, and you sent me a thank you card, and I started laughing because we didn't even, I think, have a full-on conversation, but we just kind of knew our energies would match, and then we just started having conversations from there, off the cuff, I think. Let's see if you have a different
twist. You mentioned it. I was a little disappointed. I was waiting. So in that moment, I was expecting that I was going to run towards you, slow motion, and you were going to lift me over your head. Those were the cues I was trying to give you. Disappointed now that we're going to talk about it. Totally. Yeah, I remember that as well. And then a mutual friend of ours, Chris Turcotte, I was having a chat with him, and he was like, "Man, you're so much like Francis. You've got to give her a call." And it connected us that way, which again, in our industry, we have some really, really beautiful relationship makers, or people who really focus on encouraging relationships. So I appreciate that introduction. And then I think I just randomly fangirled you. Hey, and then we talked for so long, and I remember having to pick up my kids and going to get them from school, and we thought it was going to be a 5-minute conversation, turned into probably 5 hours, and then we were best friends.
Probably, and that's it. The rest is history.
Totally.
And we just literally just keep having conversations, Chris. We just have that same energy where I'm sure you have more questions on this, that we just truly, I don't even know how to describe it, truly love each other and support each other in every which way. And you're right. I do believe, when you said that, I cringe at first hearing that it's not in our industry, and it really should be. Mm-hmm. I really do firmly believe, me and Christine just talked about this, a lot. There's enough abundance out there for all of us. And if more people took the time to collaborate, man, how beautiful this industry would be, even more than it is today.
Yeah, and we've seen that too, even at BHB. Like there's been some people who surprise us and say, yeah, absolutely, I'll give you some of my great tips and help out other brokers with this. And then there's some that say, no way, I'm not sharing the best. I'll give you maybe my, number 5 or 7 tip, but I'm not giving you the big stuff that I use. And it's kind of interesting because some will give them their number 1. So it why do you think that is in an industry like this? I mean, some, as Christine said, there's some great people like Chris Turcott who will connect people and build relationships. And then there's the other side. What do you think causes the other side? And why is it so detrimental to maybe your business if you're not making friends in the industry? Christine, maybe we'll go to you first.
Sure, yeah. And I would say, just sort of verbally processing my thoughts, that it would most likely come down to how we define success. So both Fran and I have really taken the time to take a holistic view of our lives and of our businesses and really try and redefine for ourselves subjectively what success looks like. So I'm of the belief that we can cultivate any version, and we can cultivate satisfaction, which comes to me from relationships. So we having these deeper level connections, it really feels meaningful to me. And that to me feels like success. And so I can't speak to the others who choose not to participate, but I would say they've probably defined their version of success in a little bit of a lonelier format, which may shine the light on them, but it's less focused on lighting up the room. Does that make sense?
That makes total sense. Yeah. Francis, would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely, 100%. I think, the level of relationships that you develop over your time in your personal life and your career does come down to what's the definition of success for you, especially from a professional standpoint. I think a lot of the times when you're in a hyper competitive environment that we are in mortgage sales, those lines all of a sudden can almost somehow be blurred as to what you define as success. Can I say that word? Yeah, I struggle with it because, just the past week that we've had like the CMA awards, not to discount them. I know it's super important to some people, but I've seen too many times where people will step over people in a sales environment in order to get those accolades. And I really feel it's kind of short-sighted in a lot of ways. And I think that's where me and Christine are totally on the same page, is that we're playing the infinite game here. We're in an environment where success to us is that long marathon. It's not that short sprint. It's not what sales numbers I'm going to get tomorrow, what accolades I'm going to get tomorrow. It's really looking at it from a standpoint of where do I see myself in 10 years, and understanding that in order to get anywhere successful in life, you need to have people around you that are, not only going to support you. I mean, the one thing people have to understand, like me and Christine, we will debate stuff like wholeheartedly with each other. But I trust her enough that I know that if I go to her something, she'll call me when I'm offside about things. And I'm not taking it from an egotistical standpoint, because I truly understand that she has my back. She wants me to be the best version that I am, and vice versa. And you need those relationships in business. Like, you need that type of friendship in order to elevate each other and push each other up to succeed.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's, so important to be able to have both sides of it, both the encouragement and the kind of almost calling you out side of the relationship as well, right? Because it keeps you honest, and it also helps you grow, right? You're not going to grow if it's just constant praise or it's constant, celebration and celebrating of yourselves, like you say, with those awards. That actually brings up an interesting question, because have you seen ever in your relationship in this industry, which is now going on a long time, right? I mean, have you ever had where you kind of did have a professional rivalry or something going on where, where you maybe even competed with each other or held each other accountable to things that you said you would do, and then achieved it because you held each other accountable?
I wouldn't say we've had a rivalry, simply because I think we're lovers, not fighters. And I think that we're both of the belief that we both are driven to grow as humans. And so what I love so much about Frances, and probably is a part of my echo chamber, is that she's able to take constructive, I wouldn't even call it criticism, but constructive feedback, or an assessment of, hey, maybe if you looked at it from this way, and I can do the same thing, you know, and sometimes you hear friends saying, with all due respect, or, you know, I'm just going to tell you as it is. And I love that because it also builds trust. So I know that in order to grow, I'm only looking at life through my lens of perspective. I desperately need people who don't agree with me. And I appreciate her so much for that. So I certainly don't think we've ever had conflict. I didn't think we did anyways.
No, never.
We have grown so deeply together and in the same direction, I would say, because we have a really candid, honest, respected, and safe environment to do so.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I don't think, not once ever, Christine, I've ever seen you as a rival. And if anything, like, we've been each other's biggest cheerleaders. That, yes, we are at different parts of the country and we will go in the same ecosystems, but at the same time have our own ecosystems. That what the beautiful thing about cultivating relationships and friendships like that in your business that's super important is we've been each other's echo chamber, as you called it, or voice in other rooms when the other person isn't there. Like you and Chris, when we were talking, I'm like, no, you need to talk to Christine because I know her from such an intimate level, and having that friendship, I know where it's like, no, you need to tap Christine on this opportunity for this or this or this. And she's done the exact same thing for me. And that's the beautiful thing about once you get out of that egotistical mindset, because it really is coming from a place, like people think ego. If you don't understand ego, anyone listening, do a deep dive on what having an ego really means. And it's both a negative and a positive. But what you don't want is the ego to take over, to constantly be that voice in your head saying that everyone around you is competition. And it's coming from a place typically from insecurity or fear or other things. And, you know, to Christine's point, I think we get along so well is that we know that we're both trying to elevate each other. So often that we'll throw things in each other's way to help each other elevate to those next levels with an understanding that there's abundance out there in this world, Chris. Like there's enough business for all of us to go around. And it's such a beautiful thing when you lean into each other and you help each other.
And just to compound on that too, Fran, sorry, just to kind of take that is I think one thing that we do really well together, if I can say so myself, is that we celebrate ourselves and we celebrate each other. I think oftentimes in relationships, there's this reservation for celebrating yourself in the fear of this perception of ego, where I love that I can call Fran and be like, man, I just did the most awesome thing. Did you see this? And she does the same. And we can absolutely wholeheartedly celebrate each other. And it's a safe enough space to celebrate ourselves. I think that's actually, unfortunately, a unique experience, but it's absolutely brilliant. And we do it so well.
I was just going to say that
we do. And Chris, I'm going to try it. See, this is what happens when the two because you know what, Christine, early on, there was hesitation there. Let's be honest. There was a few calls between us where you'd call up and you'd be like, I got this award, but I don't know. I feel like I could hear it in your voice. And what do I say to you? I'm like, why the fuck are you celebrating it? Like it takes nothing away from the other individual, but you got it. You're right. It is rare in this industry to have that because a lot of the times people will be in competition with each other when they're getting the top sales award, when they're getting the speaker call-in or the engagements, when they're getting the articles. And, you know, if we want to be a professional industry, like we have to really start to step away from that and celebrate each other because, again, I keep stressing this. There's enough business for all of us to go around. There's no way one individual can monopolize it.
Yeah, do you think that the new agents, well, not even just new agents, anybody, they have a tendency to spiral on their own? But when you have somebody like you guys do, where you can sort of bounce things off of each other, or say I did something great, maybe when the other's having a bad day, it kind of helps cheer you up or get you out of that spiral sometimes. And you know, so I find that when I talk to new agents, a lot of the things that happen are they think that something's gone bad, but then they'll just make it so much bigger than it really was because they have no one to talk to, nobody to bounce it off of, and then you go, well, why don't you try this? And it happened to be just one little thing, but because they don't think of that or they're in that spiral, they can't get to that answer. Do you think that that's why it's so important to have friendships like you guys have?
I always think back to when I was a new broker. If I could learn one lesson or have one takeaway, it's that a problem is only as big as you allow it to feel in the moment. So absolutely having someone else who can say, I've shared that experience. There's nothing worse than feeling like you totally messed something up. Like you've made a big mistake, you're feeling embarrassed, and you don't even want to share with anybody else because you don't want to feel humiliated. So yeah, I think that having someone who not only can you bounce ideas off for the future planning, but who you can share in that shame. So I think what is it that Brene Brown says, Fran, you might know of, the only thing that shame needs in order to remain or something is to not be spoken. That's my interpretation of it. So
Yeah. I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
And that's for sure an advantage. I think also in the beginning, we can have a scarcity mindset. And just to compound on Fran's comment from earlier, is there is more than enough business around, and they don't know, they haven't experienced success or what we perceive as to be success in the industry yet. So they don't know what it feels like. They just are focused on what it looks like. And to them, they start trying to chase this goalpost, and they think, okay, well, if I lose that one mortgage, or if that one client feels that I didn't do right by them, it feels so big, and they allow it to take up more space in their mind and in their heart than maybe it deserves.
That makes sense. Anything on that, Francis, from you?
Yeah, you know what? Christina summed it up beautifully. It's all the perception of being at the beginning. And you're right. The longer you're in this industry, your perception is going to change by the experience that you have. But anyone starting off new is you can compound those experiences by leaning into each other and being vulnerable and sharing those stories with one another. So you're not feeling alone. Like, the type of work environment that we work in can be very isolating. I mean, COVID has compounded that even more because a lot of offices are now closing. There's more, Zoom meetings or remote stuff. So you don't get that water cooler talk that, let's say I first had 30 years ago when I started at the bank, like you did have an actual water cooler. You actually talked around the water cooler. Like that was legit, right? Back in the day. You don't have that ability to cultivate the relationship. So, I mean, if any new agents are on here, I would say take the time to lean into your community and your brokerage and your people that are around you, network, and take the time to cultivate those relationships, meaning, reach out, have those conversations, connect with like-minded individuals that you work with. Like, even if starting off by saying, hey, I love this conversation. Can we talk every single week? And scheduling that in, like Christine, I know you're brilliant at that with a lot of people in the industry, that you'll take the time to actually schedule in to make sure that you're having those conversations and maintaining those relationships. And I think, as human beings, it's so important to connect with one another and not isolate yourself, because that truly is the way to be successful, is sharing those stories in those moments.
I love that, Fran. And sorry to interrupt there, Chris, but just again, one more thing to compound on it is I think you hit the nail on the head with the vulnerability comment, because the challenge that a lot of new brokers have is when that you're living in a facade, you're pretending like everything you do is perfect and that you're really far down this pathway of success. But then that also doesn't leave space for others to share in their vulnerability. So if you don't have a safe space, if you don't have someone to lean on, the most brilliant thing that you can do is to create that for other people. And by doing that, by being vulnerable, that's exactly what you're doing, is you're creating a space. And you might have to go a little bit farther out for people to meet you halfway, but it'll be such a beautiful long-term relationship when you can actually be real and you can feel like you're being your authentic self.
Yeah, those are all amazing points. And I think that, people listening to this, they'll probably already feel like they have to go find somebody like a Christine or like a Francis, right? Which I'm sure we'll get into how you might want to do that and what events you might want to attend to do that. But do you guys, before we move on from this, because I think this is so fascinating, do you have an example? And I'm going to put you on the spot. I didn't mean to do this to you today, but I'm going to anyway. Do you have an example of when you affected each other's business, like an actual scenario, obviously without using client names or anything like that?
I mean, other than the basic like referrals back and forth, because I don't do mortgages in Ontario and then Fran is in BC. So like there is actual just deal help and back and forth.
Yeah, and have you ever had to run a scenario by the other that you would never have thought of the answer without your relationship?
I would say sorry to keep jumping in there, Fran, just talk over me if you
want. Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
I would say our relationship is a little bit higher level than that, to be totally honest. So we'll send each other referrals. I've sent Fran other people's information from our company, but our conversations are typically about banking, about I think just overall about leadership and a higher level conversation than just the nitty gritty of the deals.
I like that.
And I agree. Like, I'll give you a snippet. Part of it, like we talked in like last night just to catch up, and our conversations will ping pong like, the most crazy ADD child hyped up on sugar sometimes. Like, you got to keep up sometimes in our conversations because our minds just work very very high level in that sense. But I mean, last time we got into a deep conversation of what we foresee in the future, like what do we think OFSI might be doing towards the end of the year, and play out our different opinions, which again, going back to what we talked about at the beginning, is that we are so open and vulnerable to each other and respect each other's minds and opinions, that I may say, well, I take a take on this way, and Christine might go, well, ooh, that's good, but have you ever thought about it this way? And so, being able to sort of do those high level conversations, I think inadvertently that right there allows us both to have far successful businesses and careers in this industry, because we're taking some things that we've learned or heard, and between the two of us connecting even more dots of what we see in the future in the mortgage industry and future in banking to better empower our companies and also our clients.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think that all of these things that you're doing are, inadvertently help, right? In both of your businesses for sure. But you guys, I mean, all it takes is a little bit of social creeping, and you guys do have some other things that you do. You go to other conferences that are outside of the industry and things like that. Talk to me a little bit about that and how that's impacted you guys as well.
Chris, go for it.
So Fran actually invited me, that was all her, to a beautiful community that is focused on innovation and creativity combined with leadership and philanthropy. And it's just filled with like-minded, amazing, empowering, brilliant humans. And so I feel so grateful to have been invited. And through that, we do an annual conference as well as some online platforms. And it has allowed me to develop a variety of other beautiful relationships as well. So I'd say that's probably the biggest one that we've done together. And then outside of that, it's just sort of more like friendship-based stuff. I don't know, things that besties do.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And I think, when people are looking at this and they're going, okay, well, you've got, all the things, all the conversations you have, the emails back and forth, the social media stuff, the conferences that you're attending that are outside of the industry, and there's going to be people that want relationships like that. So what's your best advice to anyone who says, okay, I'm going to get out of my silo now, and I'm going to find somebody like a Christine, like a Francis, who's going to help me out, and not just help me out, but I can help them out as well, and have that sort of back and forth reciprocal relationship. How can they do that, and where should they be going to do that?
Well, I mean, first of all, get yourself out to events. Let's be honest, everything is open back up again. We have symposiums, there's conferences, there's all different, like lenders are also hosting events. So get yourself out there to as many events that you can. Have conversations. I think as human beings, we have to go back to actually having that eye-to-eye introduction. Don't be afraid to have those conversations. Connect. Ask for the contact details. You don't have to sit there and have an hour-long engaging conversation. Like I said, me and Christine, it was eye contact was our conversation first initially, right? It wasn't actually a conversation, but, simply as, I like your vibe and I like your energy. I'd love to connect some more. Let's exchange contact details. Maybe we can get together for a coffee and start talking about what we're doing in our business and hold each other accountable. So it really is just going to a grassroots level to there. But the biggest thing is making sure that you follow up. I could tell you there's been countless times in this industry where I've had engaging conversations with people. I'm like, great, reach out. And I never hear from them again.
Yeah. That's very true. It's what do they say? That success is just one step outside of your comfort zone, something like that. And I think a lot of people don't do that. A lot of people will just say, you know what, oh, it was great to talk to Francis or Christine at this event, but they don't really want to hear from me. It's just because we had that conversation, right? And they get nervous about it, and then they actually affect their business in a negative way by not reaching out, right? So, Christine, it looks like you have a thought on that.
Oh yeah, I was thinking like gone are the days that we would pass a note to each other. Will you be my friend? And I think you're spot on. It's the confidence piece. You know, it's that we don't, again, circling back to vulnerability, we don't feel confident enough to say, I value myself. And so therefore this person will probably value me as well. And I think it's also really interesting to see where those innate connections will come into place. Because I don't know if anybody's ever experienced it before, but there have been people who I'm like, I'm such a girl fan of this woman and we're going to be the best of friends and we're going to connect and I love all of her thoughts and ideas. And then you meet them in person and you're like, oh, we just didn't really vibe. That's weird, you know? And then there are other people that it could be somebody that you least expect that you can absolutely just connect with and feel supported with or to. And so I would say, if you want to find that special friend, then the advice that I would give would be to be the kind of friend who you're looking for. And the more you can put out that and you can support other people and you can be thoughtful and generous and kind, then you will attract others who share those same values. And going back to how success looks and feels, if you're really far lost down someone else's path of success, that you're living in this facade and you're like, dollar bills, and you're living in this environment that doesn't feel authentic to you, you know what you're going to get? A whole bunch of other people who are a reflection of the facade that you're living within. So is that going to feel fulfilling? Probably not. Go back, revert back to who you feel most comfortable with, be that kind of friend, and then you will attract other people who feel best to you as well.
I love it. I love it. I have one question for you that comes from AI. Are you ready for this? So I've been trying to do this in some of these episodes to see what AI comes up with as a question regarding this topic.
Archie, who else is loving AI these days? I'm telling you, I know this is not off topic, but I'm such a fan of AI right now.
It's great. Honestly, it's actually a little scary, and even this question is
it's actually great because it's expanding your ability to do even more. Like for me, I don't know. Anyways, I'm digressing the conversation. I'm such a fan of it. I'm not even afraid of it.
Well, probably not when you hear the question, because you'll be like, wow, that's an interesting thing for an AI to come up with. So the question was, looking back, I don't know how it even does this, but this is awesome. Looking back, is there anything that you would have done differently in your friendship or business partnership? AI produced that. Yeah.
That's a great question, AI.
Chat GPT. Right? That's
first of all, if you need a friend, like a quick friend, go right to Chat GPT.
There you go. Exactly. Yeah.
Ask him the question. Ask him or her. So I would say for me, I am of the belief that, actually, hold on a sec. You go first, Fran, and I'm going to think about it.
All right. I would say if I could go back and do anything with our particular friendship, I would have made the effort to connect sooner.
You would have what, sorry?
Made the effort to connect sooner.
Yeah.
Meaning when I felt the energetic connection that time in Miami, I should have made the effort to come up to you and be like, hey, I really like your vibe, Christine, because you know that's exactly how I talk. Let's like gel and be friends.
Yeah, totally.
Chris, you know me, you know what I would have said, and opened up the conversation that way and not waited as long.
Totally. And I was actually going to say like, oh, we're all a product of our previous experiences and I would never want to regret anything and that kind of standard response. But if I really dive into it, Fran and I haven't had very many physical in-person connection moments. And those fill me up. Those like light my soul on fire. If anybody's ever actually sat with Frances, the look in her eyes will absolutely melt your soul. And so if I could go back in time, given my current circumstances, I would have made more of an effort to have connected physical in-person time to just experience each other. That I would do that.
Yeah, that's a great answer. It's a great answer because especially after the pandemic, something like that where, we didn't even have a chance to do that. Right. And now we're getting that chance again. And for people that are saying, well, I'd rather stay inside or I don't like people. It's too people-y out here. Things like that. It's like, wow, and I'm seeing people in my life that used to be social butterflies doing that. and they're now just saying, oh, I don't really care for doing that anymore. And it's just funny because I think you do lose that relationship side of things, seeing the fire in someone's eyes or something like that, where they can really help you and build you up. And it's, even though you can do that a little bit over the phone, a little bit over, like we are on Meet, that sort of thing. But honestly, when you do it in person, it's so different, isn't it?
I mean, biologically, our bodies respond differently to other humans. So our cells actually change being in that close of a proximity to each other. And I think it's something that we all got really used to, the easy way of communicating. And I think I'll give Fran a chance to talk here as well, but I think maybe we all started to figure out what doesn't feel good. And so we all figured out that there are certain conversations or relationships that we're not actually finding joy from. So it's really important to take a step back and realize that that's not a blanket over every single relationship. And we actually can be more selective now. So we don't have to engage in those one-on-one conversations that don't fill us up, but we also can take that time back and spend it in the situations that do.
Great answer.
I totally agree, Christina. We chatted a bit about that last night, even with myself. Like, honestly, Chris, even with myself going back to like these huge conferences and that, I can feel the energetic connections when it comes to individuals. So I have to get used to that energy flow again, because I'm very in tuned to the energy of the room, which is a totally different skill set. But you have to embrace it, and you have to lean into it, and you have to pick and choose where you use your energy. But cultivating relationships is the essence of the human experience. This is another reason why going back to what we're saying about AI really excites me. And some people think, oh, well, that's it. This is the beginning. We're not going to need human beings to do what we do every single day. But the essence of human beings is building those relationships. So I think that's a nice tie into even this conversation. There's one thing with, me and Christine, or people in the industry having relationships, but you should also have the same level of relationships to your clientele, to your centers of influence. Being able to cultivate relationships and friendships, in my opinion, moving forward with technology is going to be the leading indicator of whether you're successful as a broker or not. And all these other little technology things that are coming into play, like AI and other smart technologies, is going to allow you the time to be able to go out and cultivate those relationships. And that truly is what's going to make you successful.
I totally agree, Fran. And I think that the skill, personally, my belief is that the skill that's required, that as of right now, computers can't replace us with, is curiosity. Because the quality of the question that we ask the computer is going to dictate the quality of the response. So if we really want to utilize AI to its maximum capability, we have to really focus on our level of curiosity and understanding so that we can ask the best possible questions to it. And it's the same thing that goes to relationships. If we become so consumed with ourselves that we're living in our little bubbles and living at home, that we're lacking in genuine curiosity about other people, what are the 3 questions that you're going to ask everybody? I have a hard time at conferences because it's the first thing is, so how long you been here for? And it's these really standard.
How's business? How's business?
Let's just talk about life. The surface level stuff I don't do as well with. So when you can find that curiosity within yourself, and it's a muscle that you have to practice, becoming more curious about other people, then you will ask them questions that they're genuinely open to exploring with you. And then you can get to know them on such a deeper level, or not know them. Really, you can, no, don't want to go there. That wasn't the answer that I was looking for.
Yeah, and that goes exactly back to what you were saying about the people that you think you'd get along with when you met them sort of digitally, and then when you meet them in person, it's not necessarily the case, right? And again, it's that different vibe you get. It's that different energy, as Francis was talking about too, right? You feel those energies, and So, I remember when Dave and I first went to film Francis, and we didn't know what to expect. We knew she was great at the industry and everything. But
I'm laughing
we
at
got
this
in
because
the-
usually all descriptions of relationship meeting me starts this way, Chris. So I'm used to it. Keep going.
well, we had great conversations with you remotely, and then obviously when we got to your office, you were so welcoming, and you were like, but I mean, to the point where you basically dragged us in the office faster than we could come in because you were just so curious about what we were going to do, and it was just so it felt good that you believed in what we were all going to do that day, and we've now obviously done it a couple of times since. I think those are amazing things you can feel in person that you cannot feel over the phone or over Zoom or anything like that. So this has been totally awesome because I think you probably, once people have heard this, have probably really sparked some folks to go out and find these relationships. So why don't I give you each the floor and just ask only this, which is, do you have any final messages for anybody out there that's looking to build relationships within the business in particular that might help their business?
Yeah, no, I would say start off by, I think the most important thing is really learn to truly be authentically yourself. I think when you're truly authentically yourself, you create that safe space that you can be vulnerable and who you are and the people that you are around you. And that's where you create the most beautiful space to create those relationships. Understanding that you're not going to be for everybody, and that's okay. Because you'll energetically, by being authentically yourself, you're going to find your people. And that's the most important thing to be successful in business is, by truly being your authentic self, you're going to find all the right people in your business to do business with you, who's going to support you in your business. And that's where you're going to live to your highest vibration, your best self, and your happiest life. But, remember that human connection, human relationship, it really is the core of business. And I think that's one thing that me and Christine have connected early on, that we both have a deep understanding of that. We have a deep love of human beings. And we do understand that that's really where all the success starts from, is that interpersonal connection and those relationships that you build over time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Anything, Christine, from you as well?
I think Fran really covered so much of it so beautifully. So I don't want to take away from her message, but I think probably the only thing I would add is that understanding that relationships take work. All relationships take an element of selflessness and holding space for someone when you may be feeling your own feelings and going out of your way to love on another human as much as you possibly can is not always going to be fulfilling. So not fulfilling, sorry, but not always going to be
easy.
Yeah. My chemo cream is taking full effect. So let's just end with Francis's.
Well, no, I
that's
think
what a good friend does. I know what you're thinking.
Totally.
Yeah.
Cut that note. I really don't have anything to add on top of it. It was beautiful. I was going to go like mic drop.
Yeah. Well, and to go back to what Francis said there, I think it's interesting. Years ago when I was still with London Life, I remember meeting, it was back in the days when LinkedIn was not just getting started, but it had only been around for a few years. And we had them come in, their management team, to sort of explain what they could do for us as a big corporation. And I remember sitting down and having a conversation with them. And they said that, one of the things that people are doing so wrong with LinkedIn that they are trying to fix and trying to get the message out on is that LinkedIn was only ever meant to introduce you to people you otherwise would never have met. But once you have that introduction, you're still supposed to meet them outside of LinkedIn. You're supposed to meet them in person to build those relationships, right? And that was the intention of that platform always. It was to just give you that introduction to somebody you don't know. And so you see all these in messages where they're trying to sell you the entire product, in one big message. They didn't even read your profile. It doesn't even apply to you in any way. Those types of things. And I remember it upsetting them back then. I'm sure they're even more upset about it now if you talk to them. But these things keep happening. It's not being used in the way it should. So I think that's great advice, Francis, is to say, even if you want to use LinkedIn that way and say, introduce yourself to somebody, but then go and meet them for a coffee, go have a lunch, go visit them in their office, whatever it is, to build that actual relationship, right?
And Francis and I have only met in person a few times. So that speaks volumes to how much opportunity there is across Canada and really across the world to create deep and meaningful relationships.
And you've done a great job of doing that too, Christine. Of all the relationships that you have global relationships with individuals that you develop deep connections with because you've taken the time to get to know the individual and, like you said, be curious about them. And that's what people want to be seen. They want to be heard. They want to be felt. And that's really how you create relationships and friendships with individuals. And like Chris, and it goes back like you're saying on LinkedIn. I think my biggest sort of, beef with what I sometimes see out there when it comes to LinkedIn or it comes to Instagram or Facebook or social media is individuals not being authentically themselves and trying to portray a part with what they think would fit sort of that avatar in that world. One thing I've always loved about Christine, she is truly what you see out there. Like, she is what you see, and that's the difference of cultivating relationships. Like, you can't have a relationship with someone if they're not, again, and I keep stressing this, authentically who they are. And that comes with every aspect of what they put on social media, what they put out there in the industry. There should be no disconnect between the two things, because if there is that disconnect, Christine, like you were saying, that individual, I'm going to assume there was a disconnect to what they portrayed on social media versus the conversation you had in person. It's like, ooh, this doesn't really line up, right? It's kind of like I'll throw in a little joke here, Chris, kind of like you hear, I've been together 28 years, you know where I'm going with this, but dating apps, right? You show up and it's like, this photo doesn't look like you. Who the hell is this, right?
Or like my business photo.
Or your business photo.
Yeah,
Yes. The realtor, there's always a running joke, the realtor photo and mortgage brokers, where it's like, you took this 25 years ago. Like, I can totally tell because this is not you, right?
Yeah, got the 1980s mustache or something still going in the photo. And you're like, when then you get there and they're like totally gray or whatever. And it's like, wow, that was at least 50.
Yeah, like, you can't build authentic relationships or friendships if you don't start with yourself. I mean, Christine said it beautifully. It's that mirroring back and forth that ultimately happens. So if you're putting up this facade, then you're going to get it mirrored right back at you, right? But it's not going to be authentic, and eventually it's going to fall apart. What do they say? Give people time and their mask eventually falls off. Like, it just be, I saw this beautiful quote and I haven't posted it yet. If anyone knows, I post quotes all the time, but I love it. It's like, just be real. It saves everyone time.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I think so much of it is fear-based. So we're so afraid that someone's not going to like us, that someone's going to talk shit about you or whatever that is, that we feel as though we have to live in somebody else's skin to try and be everything to everyone all the time. And I think that's one of the biggest faults that we have in society is that misunderstanding that somehow it's wrong for somebody not to like you. It's absolutely okay for people to not like you. You can't be everything, because what that is completely diluted. And so if you want to be exceptional, you want to be different, then there are going to be a large amount of people who simply don't enjoy you by their choice or by not having an innate connection. And when you can really understand that that's okay, you can celebrate that. Instead of having a diluted acceptance from everybody, you can have a brilliant, condensed, and absolutely satisfying connection with other people. Then you stop worrying about it and you can focus all of your energy on creating and cultivating this satisfaction with people like Francis.
Wow, that is a great final word, Christine. That was perfect. You both nailed it with your last words to the broker nation and whoever else is listening to this too, because we'll put this wider so that, because there's a lot of businesses that are, commission based or other areas that need a lot more networking than they get. And so I think that the support that you guys have provided by being in this interview today and talking about a very personal relationship too, that will help a lot of people and help a lot of people to maybe just even motivate themselves to go out and try to find what you have and hopefully find something comparable in the end. So thank you so much for doing this. I really, really appreciate both of you taking your time. I know you're super busy because we're headed into spring season, but you did take the time and I appreciate that. So thank you both very, very much.
Thank you, Chris, for having us. And thank you, Francis, for your friendship.
Thanks, love. Thanks, Christine. Love you, darling. And Chris, thank you so much. This was great.